let's get into this a little bit more. This whole idea of should I stay or should I go? And also, I mean, look, we're not the young spring chickens that we were, Arusha, and playing the field is a little bit harder. So sometimes it's better to kind of concentrate your attention on a single stock or few, as opposed to trying to date everybody out there. So how do you go about really kind of making that decision of this is the stock or these are the stocks, that one or two that are special that I'm going to treat differently than, let's say, as you mentioned, the 15-20% gains that you're going to take here? So what distinguishes those?
It really just comes down to your understanding of the company, and it can be very tough sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you're in a strong market and everything's going, I mean, and we are in a strong market, not everything's going, but there are a bunch of things going still.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll shoot first, ask questions later, right? Where it's like things are breaking out. Okay, let me get positions, then do the research if I haven't had time to do the research. But what I've found over the years, the ones that I'm able to hold the longest are the ones that I just understand the story a lot better. One stock that I own now, like I think like everyone probably owns, is Nvidia.
Mm-hmm.
That one,
I have a position as well.
yeah. So yeah, I would hope so if you're on IBD Live
Right.
pretty much every day. But for me, that has been one of the stocks that I've been able to hold for a while because I just understood the story, right? It was just, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is picks and shovels playing AI. We're all familiar with Nvidia. Nvidia's gone on some amazing runs in the past. It was just that familiarity, and it's a large liquid stock. Now, could I have imagined it was going to do it this well? No. And did I sell a bunch of it at points where it was way too early? Yes, right. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just really hard to know how far they can go. But having at least some of that position there, especially when it was going through the base building process, right? It took like 5-6 months off.
Yeah.
Uh, During that time, I still held on to some shares, uh, and what I found is that really helped me get back into it quicker when it was ready to go again, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there were a couple of fits and starts on it, but so yeah, so in years past, I mentioned Shopify. In the past, like that was like for me in 2020 and maybe 2019, I can't remember. But I just read a bunch. I read about the story. It made sense to me, and because I had more of a tech background, and so that kind of stuff made sense to me. So there are a couple of keys. First, you need to understand the story. Second, you need a lot of times the best ideas where you're going to develop that conviction are ideas that are right in front of you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you might be using some of these products, and or you might have industry expertise. I remember looking at years ago at some chemical stocks, and I think GTLS, right, Chart Industries, right. I was looking at that stock like years ago. I'll switch over to the monthly chart, and it was probably back here in 2011, 2012 when it was doing well there. And I was looking at like their distillation processes and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about here.
Right.
Right. So it's like, I don't know why this distillation process is better than this one. Right. But I'll tell you what, some chemists could say, would give you 100 ideas why Chart Industries is doing well versus someone else. So you have to realize that you're not going to understand every leader. You don't need to understand every leader. And where you're going to have a higher probability of are within industries that you understand or products and services that you're using.
Sticking with the Nvidia example, and again, we both have positions in it now, but I I did not hold through that 70% plus correction that we had. And by the way, in Nvidia, I will also say this is one that I bought in 2016. I bought it like in the 30s, and I think split adjusted, that's like around 8. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
you
can
know,
show you exactly where I
oh, it came out of a
initially
cup with handle in
it
March
came out with a cup and
2016.
handle, but it was within that there was an
Mhm.
earnings gap, and it was the week of February 19th, 2016. It came out of there, and that's where it came on my radar. And I think I bought it probably right around that March 18,
I
2016,
was
where you were buying it too,
right
right?
there with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and back then I was even telling people at markets, I was like, I like this name. I think this looks
Mhm.
kind of interesting. But it was like a gaming chip, and it was still once
Yeah.
again it was just
It
hard.
was the GPU. It was GPU. That was it,
But it was
gaming.
hard to understand how
Yeah.
much it can grow, right? But
Mhm.
the first way it came on my radar was the chart, was that earnings gap within kind of the base, where it's like, wow, they reported really strong, had this massive reaction. So that initially tells you that Wall Street's behind the story, right?
Mhm.
And they're trying to struggle to catch up to it. And then the next earnings quarter it had another massive gap, and so now more of Wall Street's behind the story, right? So it's a lot of times the best leaders are going to have some really powerful earnings reactions early in their move.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that, again, gaming was really kind of such a big part of it. But in order for you to get those smooth gaming transitions, especially with the graphics now, I mean, look, I think we both remember what Pong was like, and the graphics were
Yes.
just not that,
Yes.
fabulous. But now, there's so many calculations that are required to get those smooth moves in your graphics. These chips that can do all of those calculations are useful for AI, automated driving, crypto mining when you're having to do these very complicated, solve these complicated problems. There's just a lot there. But you know, again, this is a stock that I think we all would love to marry, but there have been times where, gosh, you know what? Maybe we just need a break, because Nvidia has had some pretty big downturns. Again, most recently, and this last bear market, I mean, over 70%. So when do you kind of make that decision? Like, oh, you know what? This is maybe not done forever, but it's done for now. And I will say, Bill O'Neill, founder of Investors Business Daily, I saw him say a number of times, Apple, you know what? I think I've gotten everything I can out of it.
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
a few months later, or even longer, he's back in it because it's like now it's a new base setup, and I'm on board. So, can you talk a little bit about that, when maybe something that you really did have the conviction in, you just don't stay around for the downturn?
Yeah, I think the end of 2021 is a perfect example. I think we were probably all in Nvidia back then too,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And we all got out of it when it was breaking the 50-day heavy volume, when the market was going into a correction. We didn't know it was going to be this severe bear market at that time, but we knew that it was starting to trigger a lot of major sell signals for us. And it wasn't just Nvidia; it was a lot of stocks
Yeah.
triggering sell signals. So it's the most important thing, because in hindsight, yeah, it looks I mean, you can pull up a monthly chart and go, wow, I had Nvidia at 4 cents and now it's at $739, right? Look how great. The reality is it has gone through a number of these 50 to 70% corrections
Mhm.
that required, there's no way I'm going to hold through that. Kind of like you,
Mhm.
Justin. There's no way I'm going to hold through that. If the stock is giving major sell signals, breaking the 50-day on heavy volume, the market's going in correction, all of my other stocks are hitting major sell signals, I'm just gonna get pushed. The market's gonna push me out, right? And now the key is, when does the market pull you back in too? And so
Mhm.
for an Nvidia, it's keep it simple, kind of like what you were talking with Bill. Nvidia formed a cup. That was the first base it formed in over a year. So that was probably the first kind of traditional entry that you could have gotten into it.
And it was back above its 40-week moving average line.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so things were
So
pick
there are a few
Mhm.
kind of things. Where this was tricky though for an Nvidia was it had negative earnings at that
Yeah.
point and really low sales, right? So
Mhm.
that's where the trick really was in that, and so that's where kind of the conviction would come in, where you started researching like, hey, like Chat GPT just came out, everyone's going crazy over this AI thing. This maybe could be a big market, and Nvidia's in the center of it all, right? So maybe those could have given the convictions. Maybe take a little bit a chance on it at that time. Maybe you don't go in super heavy because of the negative earnings and sales, and we're just kind of coming out of a bear market at that point. But when you start coming up with some other reasons to fully flesh out the idea, to get more conviction in it, that's going to give you a better chance. And then, of course, once it broke out, the behavior after it broke out was it was acting like a leader. It was given that leadership behavior that stocks over the last 100 years have shown. It
Mhm.
broke out. It didn't. Once it broke out, it didn't look back. Right. It didn't come in and build. Go sideways a little for a while. It got past that 190 area, took off, went 3 weeks tight. So it spent a few weeks there. Went 3 weeks tight. Then got past that. Got through the next earnings. There was a little bit of an earnings gap there. Then it took off again. Did another tight area. Essentially put in a flat base here, emerged out of that, then of course had that massive 30% gap up, went tight again, went tight again. These are all things that I remember, Justin, when Bill
Mhm.
O'Neill used to teach the seminars, he would highlight all these things, right? Look how it went
He'd go
tight.
over past winners, and the reason, some people would be like, "Why are you going over all this stuff from the past?" Because it repeats. It's the same stuff happens over and over.
And Nvidia's perfect example of that,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
like five, wait, how many weeks in a row is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks in a row. I could see you marking that up, Justin,
Yeah. Mhm.
in one of those books 10 years ago, like highlighting that. And you're like, oh, of course it's there,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, you're exactly right. There, it showed the character, the technical action showed the same characteristics as many leaders of the last 100 years.